What happens when a woman who shows up every single day, never complains, never asks for anything, finally asks for one small thing, and the person who hears it decides to pay closer attention? It started on a Thursday night in Greensboro, North Carolina, just after 10:45 p.m., the kind of hour when the restaurant industry is winding down, when the kitchen smells like dish soap and old grease, when chairs are upside down on tables, and the mop bucket is already out. Cedar and Vine was a mid-level American bistro on Elm Street, the kind of place that called itself farm to table, but also served a double cheeseburger on Friday nights. It wasn't fancy, but it did good business. The staff was tight-knit, rotating between familiar faces and seasonal hires. And right in the middle of all of it, every single shift was Rosalind Faye. Rosa, as everyone called her, was 34 years old with deep brown eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She bussed tables, helped seat guests during the rush, filled in as a backup server when the floor got slammed, and stayed late to help close without ever being asked twice. Her uniform was always clean. Her smile was always present. She remembered regulars by name, knew which table by the window got the afternoon draft, knew which kids wanted extra ranch without being told. The kind of employee that holds a place together without ever getting credit for it. Marcus Webb had owned Cedar and Vine for 11 years. He built it from a shuttered diner space with $30,000 borrowed from his father-in-law and a menu scribbled on a legal pad. At 47, he was the kind of owner who showed up for the morning bread delivery and stayed for the dinner service rush. He wasn't the type to disappear into an office and count numbers. He was on the floor. He knew his staff, or at least that's what he told himself. That Thursday night changed everything he thought he knew. It was almost 11 when Marcus came out of the back office, jacket in hand, keys jangling at his side. The closing crew was wrapping up. The kitchen had been scrubbed down, the last table wiped, the register balanced. He was saying his goodnights when he walked past the kitchen pass-through and heard Rosa's voice, low and careful, talking to Miguel, the sous chef. "Hey," she said, keeping her voice just above a whisper, "you think there's anything left over tonight? Not the good stuff, just whatever you were going to toss out. The bread, maybe, or the soup if there's any." Miguel looked at her. "Sure, Ro," he said. He didn't ask why. He just started wrapping things. A small container of the evening's tomato bisque. Half a loaf of sourdough that had gone untouched on the bread station. Some leftover roasted chicken from the family meal that nobody finished. Rosa said thank you quietly. She tucked the bag under her arm like it was something precious. Then she went back to stacking the last of the clean glasses on the shelf. Businesslike, no big deal. Marcus stood at the edge of the hallway and watched all of it. He didn't say a word, but something in his chest went tight. Rosa had worked at Cedar and Vine for 6 years. 6 years. And in all that time, he had never once seen her ask for anything. He said goodnight to the crew. He walked out to the parking lot. He sat in his truck for a long moment with the engine off, staring at the steering wheel. The question that kept circling his mind wasn't a suspicious one. It wasn't the kind of question a manager asks when something doesn't add up. It was simpler than that and heavier. Why does she need the leftovers? What is going home to for her after a 6-hour shift on her feet? He almost convinced himself it wasn't his business, that she was probably just tired and didn't feel like cooking, that plenty of restaurant workers took food home. That was normal. That was fine. But something about the way she held that bag told him it was more than normal. And Marcus Webb had never been good at pretending he didn't see things. So he sat there a moment longer. And then, quietly, he followed. Now, before you call that strange, understand this. Marcus didn't creep, didn't lurk. He pulled out of the lot a full 2 minutes after her taillights disappeared down Elm Street and drove in the general direction she'd gone, figuring he'd lose her in the turns. He told himself he was just going home the long way. Except he didn't go home. He watched from half a block back as Rosa's beat-up silver sedan, a 2009 Civic with a cracked left taillight, turned off Battleground Avenue and wound down into a part of Greensboro he hadn't been to in years. The streetlights got thinner. The sidewalks cracked wider. The houses sat closer together, their yards small and patchy, a few front porches lit by single bare bulbs. Rosa pulled into the driveway of a small ranch house on Birch Hollow Road. Marcus pulled over 2 driveways down and sat with his headlights off. He felt a little foolish. A grown man parked on a dark street in his truck, wondering what exactly he was doing here. And the front door of Rosa's house opened before she even made it up the steps. And what he saw next was the thing that broke him. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, stood in the doorway in a pair of mismatched pajamas, a purple top and orange bottoms, her hair in lopsided pigtails. She launched herself off the step and straight into Rosa's arms. Rosa caught her midair, laughing softly, holding the food bag out to the side so it wouldn't get crushed. The little girl was talking fast, pointing at the bag, her eyes wide. Rosa nodded and patted her back and said something Marcus couldn't hear. Then an older woman appeared in the doorway, white-haired, moving slowly, leaning on a cane. Rosa's mother, maybe, or a grandmother. She gave a small wave at the little girl, gesturing for her to come back inside. And then Rosa carried the bag in, and the door closed behind them. Marcus sat in that truck for a long time. He didn't know Rosa had a daughter. In 6 years, it had never come up. He didn't know she lived in a house like that, small and worn down in a neighborhood that had been left behind by the city's newer development. He didn't know that when she stayed late without complaint and said no problem when asked to cover someone else's shift, she was doing all of that on the back of something heavier than he had ever imagined. He thought about the bag of leftovers, the tomato bisque, the sourdough, the roasted chicken. He thought about the fact that a woman who had given 6 years of her best work to his restaurant was taking home the food they were planning to throw away because she needed it. And he had not known. He had not asked. He had not seen. Marcus drove home in silence. He didn't turn on the radio. He went straight to his kitchen table, sat down, and didn't sleep for most of that night. The next morning, he came in 2 hours before anyone else. He sat in the office with the employee files and opened Rosa's. He hadn't looked at it closely in years, just enough during reviews to confirm she was still there, still solid, still worth keeping. What he saw this time made him feel something close to shame. Rosa had never had a raise above the standard cost of living increase, never moved up in title, not because she'd been passed over formally, but because he'd never thought to offer. Her hourly rate was $11.75. She worked between 30 and 38 hours per week, depending on the schedule, which put her take-home somewhere around $1,400 a month after taxes. In Greensboro, North Carolina, in 2024, that was not enough. Not even close. Especially not if she was raising a child and supporting an older family member under the same roof. He closed the file. He sat back, and then he picked up the phone and called his wife, Denise. She picked up on the second ring. "What's wrong?" she said. She knew him too well. Marcus told her everything. The overheard conversation, the drive, the little girl in the mismatched pajamas, the bag of food, the file. Denise went quiet on the other end. Then she said, quietly and without drama, "Marcus, what are you going to do about it?" That was the question, wasn't it? Not what happened, not why it happened, but what now? What was he going to do about the thing he had finally allowed himself to see? The answer came to him slowly, not as a grand gesture, but as a series of small decisions made one after another, each one building on the last. He started with the payroll. That morning, before the first staff member arrived, Marcus adjusted Rosa's hourly rate to $16.50 and flagged it as a permanent change. Not a trial, not a bonus, a correction. He wrote in the notes field, "This should have happened 3 years ago." He also pulled the files on 2 other long-term employees, both women, both having worked at Cedar and Vine for more than 4 years without a meaningful raise. He adjusted them too. Then he made a call to his food vendor. Cedar and Vine ordered produce, bread, and proteins in bulk. There was always surplus. Always items that were perfectly good, but past the point of going on a plate for a paying customer. Marcus had been donating some of it to a local church pantry for years, but intermittently, whenever he remembered. He called the pantry and set up a weekly scheduled pickup. Every Friday. No exceptions. Whatever was left at close, they'd come get it. That way, it wasn't charity on a case-by-case basis. It was just the way things worked. But he still hadn't talked to Rosa, and that part was harder than all the rest. He wrestled with it all morning. He didn't want her to feel watched. He didn't want her to feel like her privacy had been stripped away, because in a sense, it had. He hadn't been invited into that moment. He had stumbled into it and then made a choice to stay and look, and he would carry the weight of that choice carefully. But saying nothing also felt like its own kind of betrayal, like knowing and pretending he didn't. Rosa came in for her shift at 4 that afternoon. She had her hair pulled back the way she always did, her apron already tied before she even made it through the kitchen door. She started her pre-shift routine without prompting, wiping down the wait station, checking the specials board, refilling the sugar caddies on the 2 tops. Marcus waited until the floor was slow, just before the dinner rush. He asked her to come into the office for a minute. She nodded, no particular expression, just compliance. That small automatic readiness to do whatever was asked of her. That, too, stung a little. He closed the door and sat down across from her, not behind a desk. He pulled 2 chairs to the center of the room and sat the way you sit when you're not trying to be someone's boss. Rosa, he said, I want to talk to you about something, and I need you to know this isn't a performance review, and you're not in trouble. Not even close. She nodded, patient as always. He told her he'd heard her ask Miguel for the leftovers the night before. That was true, and he owned it. He didn't dress it up. He didn't tell her about the drive, or the parking, or the door opening and the little girl. Some truths are better shared in pieces, and he wasn't ready to give her all of it yet. What he said was simple. He heard her ask, and it started him thinking. And when he started thinking, he looked at her file, and what he found there didn't sit right with him. Rosa watched him. Her expression didn't crack, not right away. She was used to being careful, used to waiting to see where a conversation was actually going before she decided how to feel about it. He told her about the raise, the number, the fact that it was permanent and effective immediately. She blinked once, just once. Then she looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. She didn't speak. Rosa, he said. He paused. I should have done this a long time ago. I watched you hold this place up for 6 years, and I took it for granted. That was on me, not on you. She looked up at him, and her jaw worked like she was trying to decide between about 4 different responses. Finally, very quietly, she said, I didn't ask for that. I know you didn't, he said. That's part of the problem. Another long silence. Then she said, I've got a daughter, Amara. She's 7, and my grandma Lou lives with us. She's 81, and her Social Security barely covers her medications. I've been doing the math every month for 6 years, and it always comes up short. I never said anything because this job is the best one I've ever had, and I didn't want to be that person. The one who complains. The one who makes it awkward. Marcus felt the full weight of that land on him. She hadn't wanted to make it awkward, so she'd swallowed it. Every month. For 6 years. I'm not doing you a favor, he said. I'm correcting something I should have caught sooner. Rosa exhaled slowly. Her shoulders dropped about half an inch. The kind of drop that happens when something you've been holding finally gets set down. She didn't cry. She wasn't the crying type, not in front of people, not at work. But her eyes got very still in the way eyes do when emotion is moving underneath them and pride is keeping it contained. Thank you, Marcus, she said. Her voice was steady. And I mean that. He nodded. There was one more thing. He told her about the Friday pantry pickup, the weekly arrangement with the church. He told her that employees were welcome to take home any unsold family meal food at the end of each shift. Not as a favor, but as policy going forward, written into the employee handbook. Food that was going to be composted or tossed could go home with the people who cooked it and served it and kept the whole place running. Rosa pressed her lips together. She looked at the middle distance for a second. Then she said, that's going to help a lot of people here. Not just me. That was Rosa. Even in the moment of receiving something, she was thinking about the others. She went back to the floor. The dinner rush came in. Marcus watched her from the hostess stand without trying to make it obvious. She moved through the dining room the same as always, quick and certain, anticipating needs before people voiced them. But something was different about her posture. Subtle, like a wire that had been wound 1 degree too tight, had finally been given a tiny, necessary release. Word spread through the staff by the end of the week, the way things always spread in a restaurant. Quietly, sideways, through the kitchen pass and the wait station and the back corner by the time clock. People heard about the raise. They heard about the food policy. They didn't know the full story, not really. But they felt the shift. 2 other employees came to Marcus over the following week, separately, to talk about their own situations. He listened to both of them. He made adjustments where he could. He started scheduling monthly one-on-ones, just 15 minutes per employee, just a conversation. Nothing formal, just a chance to hear what was actually happening. It was a small restaurant. It wasn't a corporation with HR and DI initiatives and a mission statement framed on the lobby wall. It was just a bistro on Elm Street with 40 covers and a Tuesday prefix that the regulars loved. But small didn't mean simple. Small didn't mean the people inside it deserved less thought. And Marcus was beginning to understand how much thought he'd been withholding, not out of cruelty, but out of the most ordinary kind of neglect. The kind that happens when you get so focused on the business of a place that you forget about the people inside it. 3 weeks after that Thursday night, something happened that Marcus didn't expect. He arrived early one Saturday morning to sign for a produce delivery and found Rosa already there, sitting at one of the front tables with a notebook and a pen. She looked up when he came in. She didn't apologize for being early. She just said, "Good morning," and tilted the notebook so he could see. It was a list. Organized, neat, written in the precise handwriting of someone who'd spent years taking accurate order notes without getting things wrong. It was a proposal. Rosa had written out a plan for what she called a staff resource board, a simple corkboard in the break room where employees could post information anonymously. Things like available housing leads, food resources, utility assistance programs, low-cost health clinics in the area. She'd done the research herself, pulling information from the city's website and a few nonprofits she'd found online. She'd already identified 8 resources that she knew, from personal experience, would actually be useful to people working in service industry jobs in Greensboro. She looked at him. "It won't cost much," she said. "Maybe nothing if we just use the board that's already back there. I just thought if I didn't know about some of these things for years and I could have used them, someone else probably doesn't know either." Marcus looked at the list. Then he looked at her. "You did all this on your own time?" She shrugged. "Amara goes to sleep at 8. I had the hours." He didn't need to think about it. "Yes," he said. "Put it up. And if you need anything printed, use the office printer." She nodded and closed the notebook. Then she went and tied on her apron and got to work. The resource board went up that same week. Miguel added a note about a free dental clinic. One of the weekend servers, a college kid named Priya, added a link to an emergency student aid fund she'd found. A busser named Terrence pinned a card for a local legal aid organization that helped people navigate landlord disputes. By the second week, the board was full. By the third week, it had started growing onto the adjacent wall. Nobody made a big deal out of it. Nobody had a ceremony. It just became part of the fabric of the place. A small, unflashy thing that quietly mattered. And Rosa moved through all of it the same way she moved through everything. Without making noise. Without requiring recognition. Just showing up, doing the work, noticing what needed to be done, and doing that too. 6 months later, Marcus sat down with his accountant, a woman named Patrice who had been doing the restaurant's books since year 3. He told her what he'd done with the wages. She looked at the numbers and told him the profit margin had shifted, not hugely, but noticeably. She asked if he was concerned. He thought about it for a moment. Then he said, "The restaurant's still standing. The staff turnover is the lowest it's ever been. Rosa's been here 7 years now, and she trained the last 4 new hires better than any manager I've ever put on the schedule. So no, I'm not concerned." Patrice raised an eyebrow. "You've changed," she said. Not unkindly, just observationally. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I finally started paying attention." There was a moment he kept coming back to, even months later. It wasn't the raised conversation or the resource board or any of the visible changes. It was a Tuesday afternoon, a slow day mid-service. Rosa was rolling silverware at the wait station, working the way she always did, fast and automatic, her hands doing the task while her mind went somewhere else. Amara had a school performance that evening. She'd mentioned it earlier in the shift. Her daughter was going to be a cloud in the 2nd grade weather pageant. Rosa had arranged for Grandma Lou to take her because she had to close. Marcus walked over. He told her Miguel could close that night. "Go see your daughter be a cloud." Rosa stopped rolling. She looked at him sideways. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," he said. And then, before she could argue, he went back to the office and updated the schedule. She left at 6. She made it to the school by 6:20. She sat in a folding chair in a hot gymnasium and watched a 7-year-old in a white tulle costume float across a plywood stage, arms outstretched, and she cried in the way that parents cry when something ordinary feels like a miracle because they weren't sure they'd get to see it. She told Marcus about it the next morning. Briefly, just a few sentences. But the way she told it, quiet and full and grateful, that was the part he would carry with him longest. Not the race, not the policy, not the board on the break room wall, the cloud. Because dignity isn't always a big thing. Sometimes it's just being told to go. Being told you matter enough that someone else can handle the closing tonight. Being told you don't have to miss everything just because you're the one who always shows up. Cedar and Vine is still on Elm Street. Still serves the double cheeseburger on Fridays. Still fills up on Saturday nights when the jazz trio comes in. Rosa still works there. She's a shift lead now, a title she didn't ask for and Marcus gave her anyway, along with the pay increase that came with it. She still sometimes takes food home at the end of shift. Not because she has to the way she used to, but because Amara has developed a specific fondness for the tomato bisque and refuses to let a container of it go to waste. Grandma Lou still lives with them on Birch Hollow Road. She's 82 now, moving a little slower, Kane upgraded to a walker, still watching her programs every night and still awake when Rosa gets home, regardless of the hour, because she says she sleeps better once she hears the front door. Marcus drives home past that street sometimes. Not on purpose, just the way routes work themselves into your memory after you've traveled them enough times. He doesn't stop. He doesn't need to. He's already seen what he needed to see. Just a woman who worked her whole life without asking for anything, until the night she asked for a bag of leftovers and accidentally handed her boss the chance to become someone better. She didn't plan that. She wasn't making a point. She was just trying to feed her family. And that, more than anything, is the part that matters. Because the people holding the most together are often the ones holding the least. And it doesn't take a dramatic moment or a viral video or a courtroom. Sometimes it just takes one person finally paying attention and then choosing not to look away. Don't wait until someone asks for leftover soup to notice what they're carrying. Look earlier. Ask better questions. And when someone shows up for you every single day without complaint, understand that silence isn't contentment. Sometimes it's just the only option they've been given. Give people better options. That's all. Give them better options.